What better place to begin tracing man's humble beginnings than the book where it is all said to have originally begun? The book of Genesis. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. Now let's reread these verses once again and see if we can pick up on anything peculiar. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. From reading these verses in Genesis, it appears that God was having an inclusive conversation with at least one other being, because it clearly states, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." This sentence surely sounds as if God was making a proposal to someone else besides himself, because of the usage of the inclusive words us and our. But what does it mean when a person uses the words us and our when speaking? Does using the words us and our indicate that the individual is speaking to him or herself? Otherwise, why would God feel the need to use the plural pronouns us and our when stating his intention to create man? Especially if it is true that he did it all by himself. Could there have been someone else involved in God's plan to create man? If not, then who could God have possibly been talking to when he used the words us and our? If God was indeed by himself when proposing the idea to create man, wouldn't it have been more appropriate and grammatically correct if the words in Genesis 1:26 had read, "And God said, I will make man in my image, after my likeness"? Instead, in the translation or mistranslation of Genesis 1:26, God makes it clear that there must have been at least one other individual present with him at the time, because he specifically uses the plural pronouns us and our when establishing his point to create man. There's no way around it. If we heard someone say, "Let us build a city and name our city Sedona, Arizona," would we think that that person was saying they would be building the city themselves? Or would we assume that that person would be building the city with at least one other person, or maybe even a group? Some often try and explain away this biblical conundrum of why God chose to use the plural identifiers us and our in Genesis 1:26, and assert that by using those plural pronouns us and our, God was actually referring to the Trinity of himself as the Father, Jesus the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Now, on the surface, this rationalization sounds very plausible, but where does this interpretation of what God was really intending to say in Genesis 1:26 come from? Is there any evidence God ever clarified himself on the matter of whom he was speaking to or including in his proposal? Because he clearly referred to whomever it was as us and our. Better yet, what if God was actually speaking to someone else in Genesis 1:26? What if, when the individuals who were tasked with translating the original Bible from Hebrew to Greek for Ptolemy II in the 3rd century BC, they translated a Hebrew word that they believed to have meant God incorrectly? What if, in the original Hebrew text, the word for God in Genesis 1:26 included both masculine and feminine characteristics? For example, C.C. Zane, in his book entitled The Sacred Tarot on page 25, exclaims that when the translators translated the Bible from Hebrew, they got the Hebrew word Elohim, which is representative of both masculine and feminine deities, wrong, and mistranslated it to mean God in the singular masculine tense. Zane goes on to say, paraphrasing, that the word Elohim, which has been translated in Genesis 1:26 to mean God in the singular masculine tense, is actually a feminine plural term. Zane further states, paraphrasing once again, that the reason the translators of the Bible made Elohim or God a singular masculine deity was because they didn't want women to share in anything that could be associated with the divine. Could this be the reason why Eve was scapegoated as the singular, most important culprit responsible for the fall of man? So Zane asserts, the writers of Genesis purposefully mistranslated the plural Hebrew term Elohim into the English exclusively singular masculine term God. Zane also mentioned that the translators slipped up and gave us a peek into the true identity of who the Elohim were. In Genesis 1:27, it says, male and female created he them. For further clarification on the matter of the plural Elohim versus the singular masculine God, Zane contends that even Hebrew scholars say that Elo, E-L-O-H, is a feminine singular term, and that the ending im, I-M, is a termination of the masculine plural. And when you put the two together, Elo and Im, as in Elohim, it is used to indicate a feminine potency that has been united to a masculine idea. In Zane's work, one can see that God, being a singular masculine deity, as we have collectively been programmed to believe, is actually comprised of both the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and not one or the other. But what if there were ancient historical writings that could further explain to us in detail what really happened during the creation of man in the biblical book of Genesis? For these enigmatic answers, we turn your attention to an entire collection of ancient clay tablets that predate the book of Genesis, the Bible, the Torah, the Talmud, the Quran, and other religious scriptures by thousands of years. These ancient tablets recount a story that begins something like this. Approximately 432,000 years ago, a group of exploratory extraterrestrials arrived on Earth from an enigmatic planet in the universe called Nibiru. Nibiru is considered by many to be the 12th planet in our solar system. It takes Nibiru 3,600 years to make a complete revolution around the sun. So 1 year on Nibiru is the equivalent of 3,600 years, or 1,314,000 days on Earth. Now the people of Nibiru were called by the ancient civilizations of Sumeria, Mesopotamia, Acadia, Babylon, and Assyria the Anunnaki, which means those who from heaven to earth came. The Anunnaki called their 3,600 yearly cycle around the sun a Shar. Information regarding the Anunnaki as it relates to this ancient story was discovered in the ruins of the ancient city of Nineveh, which is modern-day Iraq. Buried deep within the ruins, an ancient library was found that contained over 30,000 clay tablets. In fact, cuneiform tablets have been found practically all over the Middle East, especially in the ancient city of Nineveh, where the library of the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal was discovered buried in ruins by Austin Henry Laird and Hormuzd Rassam from the years 1845 to 1853. These tablets were later deciphered by Sir Henry Rawlinson and then translated by George Smith. These cuneiform or clay tablets were essentially the notebooks or ledgers of the people of ancient Sumeria, Mesopotamia, Babylon, and Acadia. Lying buried amongst the 30,000 cuneiform tablets was one particular tablet entitled the Epic of Atra Hasis. From the Epic of Atra Hasis, we learn that the reasoning behind the biblical verses of Genesis 1:26 and 27 correlated with what the tablets state was the Anunnaki's creation of man on earth. The tablets recount an ancient story detailing how and why the Anunnaki first came to earth, their subsequent creation of man, and their eventual decision to destroy mankind with the flood of Noah's time. Again, all these cuneiform tablets and their subsequent stories predate modern religious texts by thousands of years. Zecharia Sitchin, in his book entitled The Lost Book of Enki, Memoirs and Prophecies of an Extra-terrestrial God, explains that the first of the Anunnaki to arrive on earth from Nibiru was an individual named Alalu. Now Alalu was a deposed king from Nibiru who journeyed to earth to escape the wrath of his rival Anu. He escaped by jettisoning off Nibiru in one of their interstellar spaceships, and after landing on earth, Alalu discovered the earth contained an endless supply of gold, which was crucial to the survival of Nibiru and its inhabitants he left behind. The Anunnaki's subsequent harvesting of Earth's gold supplies set into motion a domino effect that would ultimately go down in history as one of the most important chain of events to have ever happened. Do you want to know the entire story of the Anunnaki and its relation to our story on Earth? For answers to these questions and much, much more, please feel free to tune into part 2 of our paradigm shifting series, What If God Did Not Create Man? A beginner's guide to understanding the Anunnaki. This series is a masterclass, replete with peer-reviewed historical information designed specifically for those seeking the truth behind what the ancients understood and believed about the who, what, when, where, why, and how man was created. We thank you in advance for giving us an opportunity to share with you our perspectives on the creations and origin of man's humble beginnings. We strongly advise that you take from this message only that which resonates with the core of your being. We are the House of Melchizedek, signing off. And always remember, you cannot spell universe without you and I. So until we meet again, we send you all love, light, and life. Peace.